Chair, I think we're ready.
Okay. 12:59. There we go. It's 1 o'clock. This party started. It is 1 o'clock. It is June 4th. This is the Public Safety Committee meeting. We are meeting via Zoom because of the COVID pandemic still. I'd like to acknowledge that the press and public have been duly notified of this meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. And everybody is present. All committee members are present, including the administration. I'd like to go ahead and get a motion to approve this out of the way. The previous meetings minutes of May 13th.
I'll make a motion to approve those.
Second. I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. Aye. Jimmy?
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you. Moving on to citizens' comments. We've had a number of citizens submit both emails to us and to the administrator. We'll make those a part of the record. Desiree?
Yes, sir. We received comments from Mr. Jim Smiley related to Ocean Boulevard. We have received comments also from Mr. Kent Taylor, also related to the item on the agenda on Ocean Boulevard parking. Received a comment from Ms. Dana Andrassi Lanigan related to the item on the agenda related to dogs on the beach. We received some comments from Dudley Spangler related to the item on the agenda on Ocean Boulevard. And same thing from Mr. Jeff Jacobs related to dogs on the beach.
Okay, perfect. We'll submit those for the record and make it noted. Under old business, we have the discussion of implementing our paid parking program in the designated public beach parking zones. Discussion about the Ocean Boulevard parking as well. Desiree, I don't know if you want to go ahead and if there's any updates from SCDOT, if there's anything else we're looking for from them.
Yes.
Yes.
We have a thorough presentation to make before you all, because if the goal for the city is to implement this for 2021, whether it's January or March 1st, we need to start getting into the nitty-gritty of some of the details that need to be addressed in order to provide by council, in order to provide some direction to staff. And we've prepared a presentation that if it's okay with you, we'll go ahead and share on the screen so that you all can view, as well as anybody who is joining us virtually. Okay. And I'll go ahead. Ron, there you go. Okay. So can you all see the presentation there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So this is going to be related, this presentation is related to the paid parking on Palm and the other sections of the beach that are currently free beach parking. Slide number 2, Ron. I thought it would be interesting if we started by reviewing the mission of the Managed Beach Parking Plan. As you all know, this plan was approved in 2015 and implemented in the summer of 2016. And we've successfully managed that for about the last 5 beach seasons. Changes have been implemented since changes have been implemented since its inception for the past 5 years, and those include addressing the area adjacent to the IOP Marina, including 41st Avenue, which was initially left untreated, but now is part of the residential district. Also requiring vehicles to parallel park on all beach parking zones and prohibiting any double parking on Palm Boulevard. We also extended the 4 feet off rule from the pavement, requirement for folks to park 4 feet off the pavement, past 40th Avenue and through 53rd Avenue. The city also changed the enforcement of parking restrictions in the residential district from seasonal approach to a year-round. And the most recent change included increasing the fines for parking-related violations from $50 to $100, and any meter violations from $25 to $50. So we believe that the Managed Beach Parking Plan has been successful at reducing the impact of day visitor traffic on our residential communities. And if you see the mission of the Managed Beach Parking Plan, that was part of the impetus of City Council addressing it via a comprehensive approach. Next slide. We wanted to show everybody the operating costs of managing the parking plan. We're presenting here actual numbers from FY18 and FY19 and the budgeted numbers for FY20. We don't have actuals yet. The FY20 budget ends June 30th. So what we included here was the budgeted numbers, and those will be somewhat different from actuals. And also included are the expenses included in the FY21 proposed budget, which was approved by council for first reading last month. For some reason, the presentation keeps flashing on my screen. Is that happening in y'all's or no? No? Okay,
No.
Maybe it's okay, good. All right, so here you can see some of the operating expenses and capital costs of the parking plan. Here we have the expenses associated with the BSOs, enforcement, ticketing, the kiosks that are included, that are located at Front Beach, supplies for ticketing, tablets, processing fees, other monthly fees associated with surveillance and other software that's needed for maintaining and upkeeping that equipment, and capital costs, including the kiosks, radios, tablets, and vehicle equipment that was purchased and is continued to be maintained as part of this operation. This does not, there are other costs that are associated with providing services and amenities to non-residents who come and visit the beach for a day or two that are not included here. Some of these are, the beach garbage collection services that significantly increase in the summer months. Also, the costs associated with maintaining the municipal parking lots and some of the other amenities that are located on Front Beach, particularly the Front Beach restrooms. But this schedule provides a good snapshot of the costs associated with managing the Managed Beach Parking Plan. You can see there, roughly $300,000 a year to the city to manage the parking, the parking operation. All right, next slide, Ron. Here we wanted to show you all the calls for service for both the police and fire department. We can run this for other years. We only included 2019, but it's pretty stable every year unless anything crazy happens like a hurricane. But we wanted to look at 2019 for conversation purposes. And we all know that during the summer and the influx of day trippers stress the city's resources and personnel due to the increased activity on the beach. When we go, during weekends, we go from a community of 4,000 folks to sometimes 20 to 25,000 people on the weekends enjoying, what the Isle of Palms has to offer. Here you can see the number of calls that they respond every month. So what we did is we calculated the average number of calls per month during the off season and during the season, which for us it's March through September, and use that average of the off months as the baseline to compare the activity during the summer months, or what we call the beach busy summer season. And we can clearly see a sharp increase during March through September on both the calls from the police department and the fire department, which, almost are double the average baseline from the off-season. Next slide, Ron, please. So there is clearly a recognition that there is a very real cost to the city to providing services to citizens who don't live or don't stay on the island, so that they have a pleasant and safe and enjoyable trip to the beach. To that end, the city has been tasked, the staff has been tasked for about several months now with looking at developing a plan to implement paid parking on the existing free beach parking areas that were established in the beach and the managed beach parking plan that was approved in 2019 and went into effect in 2016. These areas are depicted there as the existing right-of-way beach parking zones. These are currently free and available to anybody who parks in the public right-of-way. These are both sides of Palm between 21st and 40th Avenue, and there are roughly 357 spaces, give or take, there, parallel parking spaces. Also, land side of Palm Boulevard between 41st and 57th Avenue. There are more or less 134 parking spaces there, and there are 61 parking spaces on the sections of 3rd through 9th Avenue. So some of the areas that are not included in the managed beach parking plan include the area around the rec center, which was intentionally left untreated. The parking lot that is adjacent to Breach Inlet, it's also part of an SCDOT right-of-way. And there is a wide right-of-way adjacent to the post office parking lot that would also be considered public parking right-of-way. We believe that these areas should be addressed in some way as part of these conversations, because should the city go to a paid parking system in other areas, there is the potential that these areas, if left untreated, could be overrun with folks looking for free parking. So we've included those there for discussion and consideration from the committee and ultimately from City Council. Next slide. Another area that requires some discussion and direction from council would be the time of enforcement. Currently, non-resident parking is prohibited in the existing residential parking districts year-round from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. But the front beach paid parking, which includes the on-street between 10th and 14th and the 2 municipal parking lots, those areas are enforced between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Council may want to consider consistent enforcement periods for paid parking and the resident-only parking. The new or the proposed new paid parking districts along Palm Boulevard and between 3rd and 9th Avenues will be directly adjacent to residential districts. So it would be unlikely that a user would pay to park if free parking is available within the residential district after 6. Next slide. Oh, go back, Fran, sorry. I failed it to, there you go. So what we included on the on the other side of the slide is a consideration of moving the paid parking portion on Front Beach to 9 to 6. And we wanted to show you all what the impact of that decision would be on finances, because we currently, like I said earlier, enforce parking there 8 to 8. So we wanted to show you all a schedule that shows the potential revenue loss if the Front Beach parking period was changed to 9 to 6. Next slide. So here you can see we took information from the credit card transactions from 2019. And this, again, this is only credit card transactions, so it does not include any cash transactions, but you could see that the grand total for credit card was 783, and the total revenue from 2019 was 932,000. So what we did was extrapolated what the impact would be, around 7% that would be of activity that would be lost after 6 o'clock. But the chart here shows, the line chart here shows that the parking on Front Beach really peaks around 10 to 12, and then it slowly starts decreasing with, an all-time low at 7 o'clock. So we would potentially, the city would potentially lose around $65,000 a year if we move from 8 to 8 to 9 to 6. So there are plenty benefits of being consistent, but there are others as well. It could be beneficial to the business community, because they would have folks visiting those establishments would not have to pay after 6. And that may be a correlation for increased business in that area during happy hour and dinner service. But it would also provide additional hours to the public to come to the beach and not have to pay for parking in the mornings and in the evenings, when it's more likely that folks come to either walk their dogs or exercise, or just spend an hour or two to watch the sunset. Okay. Another item that we would need to discuss with council is parking rates. Should the city move forward with paid parking in these existing public right-of-way beach parking areas? Currently, our metered parking on Ocean Boulevard between 10th and 14th is $2 and $2.50 an hour. The lots are $10 Monday through Friday, $15 Saturday, Sundays, and holidays, and these are recently changed by council last month and implemented as I think they've been in place for about a week now. And in the municipal lots, users also have the opportunity to pay an hourly fee after 4 o'clock, and that was done as a request of the business community that felt like it was hindering some of their activity, because folks would have to either pay $15 to come and have dinner if they were there around 5 o'clock. So we made that change, and I think that's been successful. So for the right-of-way beach parking, part of the conversation needs to be for council to have is, are we going to do a daily parking fee? Is it going to be hourly or a combination of both? And is there any desire to offer a program for seasonal passes for non-residents, and how we would be able to manage that? I thought it'd be interesting to show how our parking rates compare to other beach communities in the area and in North Carolina. You could see there that most of them have a $2 hourly rate. However, their enforcement hours are different. They're pretty much all day, 8 a.m., 10 p.m., 7 to 7, 9 to 12, 9 to 5 at North Myrtle Beach, 9 to 8 in Wrightsville Beach, and 8 to 10. So although our hourly fees are a bit higher, our enforcement hours would be less, potentially, should we go to 9 to 6. Also, you can see there that most of them manage or charge for parking in a seasonal way in the summer months. Only Folly Beach has parking rates and conducts parking enforcement year round. Okay. We also want to talk about the payment systems that we have in place that we would be able to expand to use in other beach parking areas. In Front Beach, we have a combination of physical kiosk and mobile payments through the Flowbird app. And our proposal would be to expand the mobile payment application to the new paid parking areas. Next slide. There are many benefits to implementing a pay-by-app system on Palm Boulevard and other sections where beach parking is currently available. There would be no need to install kiosks and any other infrastructure in the public right-of-way. For us, there are places where it's not even feasible to install parking kiosks, even if we wanted to. Many cities have eliminated physical parking kiosks and transitioned into mobile application devices or mobile application parking payment systems. Therefore, the user is likely to be familiar with that approach. Those folks that come, visit the island. It's a much user-friendly approach than having to pay to park by using a kiosk. The user would not have to get out of the car, walk to a parking kiosk, return to their vehicle to place the receipt in the dashboard, and then carry everything back, to the beach. And let's say they paid for 4 hours, they decide to stay 5, they would have to walk all the way to the kiosk, back to their vehicles, and then back to the beach. They could do all that transaction by using their mobile devices. The payment is also associated with the vehicle's license plate, which in turn makes enforcement so much easier for the police department. Next slide. Enforcement, as it stays right now, the enforcement would be the police department's responsibility. We try to hire at least 10 beach service officers every year. We budget for 10 every year. I think that the most that we've been able to hire was 8 about 2 years ago. So it's challenging for the police department to hire seasonal work. But we certainly strive to get 10 every year. For enforcement, we've included $100,000 for the purchase of 2 license plate readers and additional funds for tablets and printers for ticketing. And the city would also, Chief Cornett is also evaluating a potential increase to the BSO's budget, should we need to add additional personnel to enforce parking. The city would need to replace the existing beach parking signs with beach parking pay to park signs to make sure that folks know that they have to pay to park. And some of these signs would be provided by Flowbird, the same mobile application that we use on Front Beach. They would provide signs that we can place in the existing poles and also additional signs in the beach access paths. Next slide. Currently, we have a residential parking decal system for residents and property owners where the city provides annual decals to residents who show proof of residency and ownership. And vehicles and golf carts with a valid residential parking decal may park along the public right-of-way in both the residential and beach parking areas during the times when parking is regulated. And that would be at no extra cost. Next. SCDOT approval process, as you all know, the public right-of-way is owned by the South Carolina Department of Transportation. And we've had multiple conversations with them about what we would need to do in order for them to approve a paid parking system on Palm Boulevard and other road right-of-ways. And they've indicated that as long as we have appropriate signage and there is no more than a 2-inch drop-off between the edge of the road to the shoulder, and as long as the city assumes maintenance responsibility of the shoulders to ensure that we're not creating a tripping hazard and there are good, safe conditions for parking, that they would approve the paid parking plan. I made sure that they confirmed or clarified that by the city assuming responsibility of the road shoulders, that we would not be assuming responsibility for any existing drainage infrastructure. And that is correct. They would continue to maintain and improve existing drainage infrastructure, even if we have a paid parking plan. SCDOT also indicated that fees must be reasonable and be used to cover the cost of managing the parking plan and the maintenance of the shoulders. And that the process for approval includes the city submitting a permit application for a modification to our existing encroachment permit. We would have to explain how the plan would work and also indicating that we would be assuming maintenance responsibility of the shoulders of the road. And there is roughly a 2-week application approval process for that modified permit application. Next slide. So here is a timeline for next steps. And this is, rough and may change. It's fluid, but I was looking at what we needed to do to be able to implement the beach parking season starting March 1st, and kind of backed out of that everything that needs to be in place in order to be ready for that date. And I have here, June and August of this year, we would continue to finalize the plan and seek input from City Council. We are hoping that by August, the Public Safety Committee could make a recommendation to Council on the final paid parking plan. Council would consider and approve that plan end of August. Between August and September, we would draft the ordinance amendments and finalize the sign plan, which is that document that is included in your packets that shows exactly where the signage is and all the areas clearly designated as they've been approved by council. September, the City Council could submit the permit modification request to SCDOT based on that final sign plan. And we would submit a letter assuming maintenance responsibility of over the shoulders of the road. We do that for our first week of September. By maybe mid-September, we have approval from SCDOT, and then council could consider first reading of the ordinance amendments and the approved sign plan. October, council holds its public hearing and second reading of the ordinance amendments. In between November and January, the staff would procure and install any equipment necessary and make any necessary improvements to the right-of-way, to the public road right-of-way. January through March, the city would begin a marketing and education campaign to our neighbors to make sure that folks understand what the changes that have been that will be implemented. And then the beach parking season would begin March 1st through October 31st. Next slide. So I just want to reemphasize where we need direction from council so that we can finalize the plan. One would be the locations for implementation, days and times of enforcement, parking rates, and then approval and acknowledgement of the responsibility for the shoulder maintenance. Is there anything else, Ron? Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Desiree. That was good.
Good recap.
Yes. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'm just going to touch on a couple things. You said that the city's going to assume responsibility for shoulder enhancement and maintaining shoulder. We're not really assuming it. We're already doing it now, theoretically, really. I mean, we're going through, and we're just now. It's just, I guess, it's logistically we are doing it, but we have been for many years going through and putting our city funds into stabilizing that shoulder for some time. Also, back in your slide, I think it had a toggle of about $300,000 that we was going into expenses into doing that, which was, like you said, did not include the funds for extra personnel for public safety, did not include all the extra expenses for garbage pickup. And I'm not sure if there is a number for that as well to try to figure out what that would be. And I know you looked at that. I know it's difficult to put your finger on it, but it's definitely something that we'd love to have as well.
Yeah, we are working on a schedule that shows that. We've been talking about it and trying to identify everything that would be included. And certainly would want to have that when we go to full council for a similar presentation. But you're right, the $300,000 just includes parking. It's parking related management. It doesn't include, livability, the time, our livability officer spends supervising and managing the BSOs, the police chief. It doesn't include all of the other expenses associated with servicing the community who enjoys the beach. That's just parking related. The other number would be far more inclusive and of the true impact that day trippers have on the Isle of Palms resources.
And just for clarification on that, and that is all those expenses are being paid out of city revenue sources. I mean, there's no county that would have been brought up previously, that, county is is paying for a lot of these issues, or folks in the state. This is all coming out of our tax base, basically.
Well, we are.
An accommodation through that, a series
Correct.
of accommodations, taxes, and.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Accommodations, which are people, heads and beds, people who stay on the island.
It's generated right here in the city.
That is correct. That it's generated on, in this city for people who come and stay in either short-term rentals or hotels on the island, and also some parking revenue from the municipal parking lot. You're correct.
Jimmy, Philip, you have anything or any questions?
Yeah. Hey, Ryan, real quick. And I guess Desiree, the reason for going 9 to 6 would be because there are so many residential signs already out there now, as opposed to flipping the other way and make everything 8 to 8.
Yes, so a couple reasons. You're correct. The residential district signs already have 9 to 6 embedded in them. So that would change, would have to replace all those signs, and there would be a cost associated with that. The reason why back in 2015, the decision was made to do it 9 to 6 was residents had, people, longtime residents and people who live here full time, reached out to the city and said, we don't want to have the burden of having to provide daily visitor passes to friends or family members that come for an evening dinner or a party. So that was part of the reasoning for the 9 to 6, so that after 6, there would be no added burden on residents.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah, that was a good presentation. Thank you guys for pulling that together.
Does the Charleston County Park, if they start theirs at what time they open up, at 8?
8. Mm-hmm.
Jimmy,
so a lot to noodle on.
Yes, there is, and I not that I want to go through and replace all the signs, but to mirror something of an 8 to 6 would be something good as well, because it'd mirror Charleston County. It'd stop a lot of the folks who, and we know we have folks that line up 7 o'clock in the morning, right bright and early to get into Charleston County parks. And that's, like I said, we got time to figure that out. But I think that one of the other parts is to where does this where are we going to put it at? I mean, those other questions, breach inlet parking lot as well. Would that be one of them? And that, it's one thing we have to come forward with. And I know we had talked when we met with SCDOT, and we talked about going through and doing some redevelopment of that area. Mm-hmm. And they were going to look into that as well and see what we could do and try to reorganize some of that parking. And I know we have some good engineering firms that we've worked with that redeveloped some of the parking over at Warren Creek area. Maybe we can reach out to them and try to put something together where we can redevelop that area and make that parking a little bit more efficient, because it is kind of crowded and can be somewhat dangerous.
Certainly we can work on that. I will say that during my last conversation with SCDOT, they indicated that they would have no problem approving a paid parking system in that area, and it would certainly make sense to include as part of the overall plan. I do want to also say I did not include this in the presentation, but one thing that I'm looking at is, are there any opportunities for cost savings should we outsource this operation? And I've been in contact with the town administrator for Sullivan's Island and from Folly, because they both use, Sullivan's Island intends to use, I believe, a parking management company to manage the whole operation. And it happens to be the same one that Folly uses. Folly is very happy with how they operate parking in their community. And there may be some cost savings associated with that. But it would mean outsourcing everything. They write tickets, they handle disputes administratively, they buy the equipment, have the equipment, manage the equipment. So I'm looking into that too. So, and I'm hoping that by next month I can show you all sort of a pro forma of what that would look like and the cost associated with doing that. But there's some potential positives with considering that option if that is the will of council. Just want to make sure that you all have all that information.
Jimmy, your word?
Years ago, I looked into this, and Wrightsville Beach is pretty much where I grew up, and they have outsourced it, and they're very happy with it. And they wouldn't even, they have their own department. You call town hall there and you'd have to go to another number, even talk to anybody in the parking department. It takes all the politics and all of the council members, they call them aldermen up there, out of the equation. And they wouldn't even think about doing it in-house. So I would like to see what the cost savings are. It'd be interesting to explore that further.
I agree. And I think everybody would be interested in doing that. It doesn't mean that we would be able to eliminate our BSOs completely. We still, we still need people out on the beach, and they would be dedicated to enforcing the rules on the beach: alcohol, smoking, plastics, and all of that. So it would take them away from having to enforce parking. So I'm hoping that I can get that presentation before you all next month.
Okay. Philip?
Hey, Ryan, real quick, sorry. Can we get a copy of that presentation, Desiree, to the committee?
Absolutely.
Just to kind of keep it in front of us and the decision points that we need to be thinking about between now and next meeting.
Yes, and we'll attach it to the
okay, that's
to the meeting packet so that it's included for the public as well. It just came off hot off the press. So I apologize for not sending that sooner, but we really wanted this to be, give you a comprehensive presentation and where we need direction from council in order for us to meet that deadline of implementation by March 1st.
Okay. Perfect. So do you need any decision from us right now on that? Okay.
Nope, not yet.
Along with that, we've also had discussion. We've got, I don't know if everybody else has, but some of the public input was about discussion of parking on Palm Boulevard. It was brought forward by a resident who was talking about increasing resident parking only all the way up from, I believe, Desiree, is it from 9th or 10th Avenue up to the terminus or?
So parking, so SCDOT has maintenance responsibility from 10th through 3rd.
Correct.
Or 4th, yes. And then from there on to Breach would be local responsibility. And it's been the city's position that it's owned and maintained. It was publicly dedicated as a public road in 1986. And the city has maintenance responsibility over that section of road. And you all know, particularly Councilmember Pounds, who chairs Public Works, that we are just wrapping up a project there replacing pipe culverts. So it's certainly been treated and as a public road. So it would be up to City Council to decide whether or not that area would be included in the residential district or in the beach parking district. And unfortunately, Julia is not here to provide legal advice, but I have tasked her with developing a memo for council to consider. And in order to maybe save some bucks, she's going to come to City Council and give that legal advice to full council at the end of this month.
Okay. Good. I know what there has been, even with some of the emails we got today based on, and I'm no attorney, but in the way to, how reading that back, you can read into it so many different ways on how one could or could not interpret it. So if we can, again, I'd appreciate it. And for all the council to digest it. Anybody else have any questions on that? I'll open up the agenda here. Okay. Moving on to next item is update on our public safety building rehabilitation.
I have a good update. I am very happy to share with you all that without going forward with the large portico design for the front of the building, we are tracking to be completed much sooner than we expected. And currently the team is showing completed by November of this year. we're very happy, very, very happy about that. And they've been able to overlap some work, and thanks to Chief Graham and Chief Cornett, they have been able to get in some areas sooner than originally scheduled. And that has really helped with this new completed date. Currently, what's going on, you can see that the work outside is moving around to the front of the building, and waterproofing is crossing over onto the fire department side. They're almost complete with the hardy install on the police station side, and painting will follow right behind on the exterior. On the interior, the fire department's second floor, those ceilings are being installed currently, and the walls have been painted. We have started the demo on the third floor, along with the overhead installation for the ductwork on the third floor as well, on the fire department side. On the police department side, the walls are being prepped for paint, and the light fixtures have been replaced. The sally port and the fire sprinkler line. Say that 3 times, Desiree. And electrical conduit and wiring are being replaced. And there is a new enclosure around the elevator that has been built. And some of the interior walls have been waterproofed, insulated, and the hardy has been also installed. For the apparatus bay, they started waterproofing and have received insulation and hardy, but not yet installed. So that is pretty much a high level overview of what's going on. They're moving, they're ahead schedule and on budget. So
That's
I do
great.
want to say the mayor and Douglas and I and Chief Graham have conducted a walkthrough of the building, and I am offering that invitation to anybody on council that would like to go over and walk through with the project manager. Let me know, and we'll schedule that for a time that is convenient for both parties, and we can get you to see some of the progress firsthand.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody?
Good news.
Yes, it is. Ahead of schedule and under budget. That's what we like to hear.
Right?
Let me write that down, Ryan. I'm not familiar
Right.
with those terms.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is discussion of existing rules for dogs on the beach. And I know everybody got the letter this morning or was it last night from BJ Bowen on Waterway, where his daughter was knocked down. And we've had a couple instances. In Chief, I want to talk to you about this. During our last meeting, we've talked about increasing enforcement of, dogs running loose on the beach. What have you seen for enforcement or?
So during the times where the leash law is in effect, we have been out there and we have seen most people comply. And those that were not, typically we found we're not aware of the hours or something along those lines. And I think we've seen a big increase in people actually using the leash during the leash law hours. The emails I saw this morning in reference to some recent events were all during hours that would not have been required for leash law. The difficult part for those times are even when a dog owner has their dog off leash, they still have to have them under control. The hard part for that is there's no way for a police officer to know that until they see that. And typically by the time we see that, something has happened or somebody sees it because something has happened, like the child being knocked over. We would not have known that those dogs weren't under control until they did something that showed they were not under control. Unfortunately, that is a reactive approach for those situations. And again, those were during those hours where people are authorized to have their animals on the beach off leash.
Okay. And but moving forward, trying to develop policies to improve this. And like I said, it's hard to, especially when people are obeying the law. I mean, when their dogs are off leash, but not, like you said, not obeying the law because they're not under control. So, and some of the ideas have been brought up about making areas, certain sections of the beach off leash only, and that's something we can discuss. Certain areas, I mean, you can make different spots throughout the island, make that an area off leash only, so people are recognized that if you're going to the beach, you know, you can go to certain areas where you know that there's not going to be any off leash dogs, and that was some of the ideas that were brought up. That's one of the things we can float forward, Desiree. Try to work on that, and get that information out there. We've been down this road a number of times with this. I don't know if you have any other suggestions. I'm trying to find a compromise to work with the people where there's areas that, you know, again, on leash and off leash.
Well,
Go ahead.
Go
Philip.
ahead. Oh, I was just going to ask.
I thought it was a question.
Just like your parking analysis of other beaches around, it'd be interesting to me to know, you know, what others are doing around this leash law times and such. So go ahead, Desiree. Sorry.
Yeah, so your packet does include this table. I don't know, it may have gotten lost between all the beach parking signs.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I mean, it is a one page, but we did, because we were asked last month to develop this table and this comparison of the dog rules in other communities. So we did, and we looked at Sullivan's Island, Folly Beach, Hilton Head, and Myrtle Beach, and it's sort of all over the place. You know, there are some that do require a permit. There are others like us, it's encouraged but not required. The on and off leash hours are different across the board. There are some communities that don't allow any dogs to be off leash at any time. Those that do allow have very strict times in the mornings, very similar to what we allow. There are also, there are places, you know, 3 of them who don't allow any pets on the beach during the summer months. So from May 1st to September 30th, no dogs are allowed, whether they're on leash or off leash. And then, you know, also vaccination rules those are pretty consistent. You know, dogs need to have some proof of vaccination by virtue of a collar or some certificate that they have on hand. So yes, I don't know if anybody has any particular questions, but I thought that this would give you all a good snapshot again of, you know, how do we compare to other communities and what are some of the opportunities for changing or amending or doing anything different that we think may yield some better results in the enforcement area.
Okay.
I think it's interesting, you know, what's been brought up about identifying specific locations on the beach where folks would know that those are the only places that dogs are allowed to be off leash. Certainly would make it easier on, you know, for officers to enforce. Chief, I don't know if you have any questions, but, you know, I think that you'll have some residents' concerns with, you know, if we identify 10th to 14th Avenue as one of the locations for off leash rules, then somebody who lives on 25th Avenue might have to walk all the way down to Front Beach to, you know, let their dogs off leash. So I don't know how we mitigate every potential unintended consequence, but we certainly could start somewhere if it is the will of the committee that we look at different alternatives.
And I would, Desiree, I would envision, I mean, probably a spot, you know, south of the connector and a couple of spots north of the connector on the beach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just throwing it out there and just try to get something like that. Like I said, it may be easier to enforce, but then you're going to go through and you know, are you creating dog parks at different parts of the beach where right now everybody's running everywhere. So, but I'd like for you to reach out to the community, try to get some input, and some feedback as well. And,
is this something that the committee would like to entertain, having a group of citizens involved in some way, or? I
don't think so. I mean, as
no?
long as,
okay.
You know, on the heels of the last, I mean, with BJ's email that we got the other day and the previous one, you know, let's just say what the city's trying to look at, and I said this at the last meeting, the city's really trying to find ways to meet the needs of all residents. what are some of the suggestions? And it's so much easier now with social media, and people are reaching out and getting back and forth.
Mhm.
You don't really have to have a group meeting. You have to just try to get citizen feedback, and and hear all sides of this, hear everybody's recommendations, concerns,
Mhm.
before we just go through and just make across the board changes. But I definitely, obviously, something to be adjusted.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay.
No.
Let me go back.
So just to make sure that I have clarity on the assignment from the committee is for the staff to develop some alternatives or recommendations based on the input from the community that we've
Yes.
received so far.
Yep.
For you all. Okay.
Perfect. That'll work. Discussion of recommendations from the Planning Commission related to short-term rentals. Now, we had this discussion. Let me get back to Zoom here. We had this discussion last week, and when Douglas was in the meeting as well, and highlighted the different, I think there were 4 really that we're trying to move forward with from out of the Planning Commission. And Desiree, I don't know if we need a motion out of here to take that to City Council, or if that's going to come up for discussion City Council again.
Mm-hmm. Well, there were some questions that were asked by the committee last month, and Douglas can speak to those before you all consider a motion. But then, yeah, the action item would be, making any recommendations be presented to full council. Some of the recommendations presented by the Planning Commission do require changes to the code.
Mm-hmm.
But, council received the presentation from Douglas after those recommendations were developed, and there hasn't been much discussion on next steps other than assigning it to the Public Safety Committee for discussion. So, yeah, a motion could be presented to council at the end of the month. Douglas, I think he's here.
Yes, I'm here. Desiree, I'm not sure if you want me to go into the question, the kind of legal questions. I understood it and what Julia's response was. Do you want to do that?
Because it would be
you want me to do that?
Well, it's legal advice that I don't think we should be sharing unless we're in executive session, and Julia's not here. So is there anything else, Douglas, that we could share with the committee?
No. Well, I would just say that the city attorney did have a suggestion concerning the concern that was expressed about due process. So I think there would be a modification to what the Planning Commission has proposed based on that. And quite frankly, the modification really deals with all revocations and suspensions and kind of how they would be handled going forward. So it's kind of a broader, really she looked at the broader issue of all business license revocations and the due process there.
So Douglas, but basically on some of the other points, the highlights out of the Planning Commission was an owner's representative to be available.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. An owner's representative would have to be able to physically respond within an hour. The trigger to initiate suspension would be clearly defined as 5 founded complaints. The act of advertising a short-term rental in and of itself would be illegal, so you wouldn't have to prove that a rental had been rented to pursue it. And then the daytime occupancy was suggested to be reduced from a flat 40 people, regardless of size, to twice the nighttime occupancy with a cap of 40. So those are kind of in summary their suggestions.
I think we had some issue with the rental business license being advertised as well, just the complication of it and
Mm-hmm.
kind of isolating and
Yep.
making one industry. Not all businesses have to do it on their advertising, but just actually specifically saying that this
Right.
this style business to do it. I don't think we would be able to move forward with that, but the other, at least the other three, I don't have an issue with. The one with you're talking about that we have information from the city attorney in due process. Obviously, we have to wait and hear on those recommendations. So I don't know, Desiree, what you want from us on this. If we need to.
You could, the committee could make a recommendation for those three, a recommendation to implement the three recommendations from the planning commission to council. And then during council meeting, we can have the city attorney provide legal advice on the fourth recommendation related to the trigger for revocation from 3 to 5 founded complaints. You could include all 4 and get advice on that 4th item and make a decision before second reading.
Okay. Anybody have any other? You're on mute. Mute. You're still mute. I think Jimmy's making a motion.
Hey, there you go.
They don't like to hear me talk. So I just want to simply just make a motion to what Desiree recommended. They're all 4, and we'll get legal advice from Julia in executive session on number 4.
New process.
I'll
So,
second.
Is
so
there a
just
second?
so we're
Douglas, give me a second. Where's it? Okay, Philip Pounds.
Yep,
Okay,
go ahead.
thank you. Go ahead.
so just for clarification going forward, is the motion to eliminate recommend it as proposed with the exception of eliminating the need to display the license number
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
in advertisements? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Correct. I believe that the
Okay.
the 4 recommendations would be the one associated with the owner's rep, the occupancy, limiting the occupancy, the founded complaints, which we're going to get legal advice on, and then the 4th one, it's escaping me.
Well,
It's
I would just say that the text of there is a specific text that they've recommended, and a lot of it is just, well, not a lot of it. That actually does cover most of it. But the other one, Desiree, I think that you're thinking of is the advertising it
yes.
without
Which
a
we're not
license
including.
is a violation as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So removing that, we require owner's representation, maximum occupancy, from daytime as well. So it'd be twice the nighttime. And then trying to just scroll.
And then the complaints.
Correct.
Fine.
Okay.
So those 3, and we'll receive
That's what-
advice on the 3rd one. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Perfect.
I got it. You got it, Nicole? Okay,
I
good.
don't know why I was thinking there's 4, but maybe
I know, me too.
It was, yeah. Okay. So there's a motion and a second to take this to city council and have more legal advice from our city administrator or from our city lawyer. All those in favor? Signify by saying aye. Jimmy? Aye. Perfect. There's all 3. Unanimous.
Jimmy, I don't think you're muted anymore.
I'm not.
He's not. It's acting.
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Trying to get you to laugh a little
All
bit,
right,
Desiree.
I'm scrolling back up.
I'm going to hang on. I think that's nothing
you,
else for me,
Douglas.
right? That's right.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Douglas.
All
you're
right.
good.
Thank you all. Have a good day. All right. Bye.
Bye, you too.
Under new business is discussion of beach parking at the recreation center, 27th and 28th. And I asked to put this on here because just for the fact that as much traffic we've seen over here the last few weeks is the recreation center on 28th fills up, along Hartnett fills up, down 27th fills up. kind of eliminating all our spots for parking if anybody wants to go to the recreation center. The way I'm looking at it, hey, Norma Jean, the way I'm looking at it is I would really like to, if possible, because I know, and I'm not sure about 29th Avenue, but I know 27th and 28th is South Carolina. I mean, is Olive Palms roads. So we're pretty amenable to making changes there. But if we could make the area of 28th just recreation parking only, so that there would be no beach parking there. And so that, and I don't want to say, and I don't want to get to a point where I'm saying it's resident parking only, because obviously that would be a mess trying to, push that with folks coming from everywhere. Desiree, you got something?
Yeah, we, after you and I discussed this when we were developing the agenda for today's meeting, I've had, several meetings with the staff and with Chief Cornett, particularly when we talk about the parking plan, is that making that area recreational parking only is sort of unenforceable, because, we would need to monitor and make sure that whoever parks there is not, going into the recreation center and not into the beach. So it would require around the clock, basically, enforcement. Norma Jean, you may want to, please chime in as.
And I'm not, I'm not looking for. It seems like there's always an excuse not to do something, but I'm not looking for around the clock enforcement of that area. I'm looking to help control our beachgoers filling up our recreation facilities for residents and visitors who want to use it.
Mm-hmm. So maybe Chief Cornett can speak.
We go through and you drive around the island, you have somebody up and sitting in the parking lot monitoring the parking for up by the marina. You have somebody monitoring the parking some of the parking lots within the front beach areas. You have somebody monitoring the parking lots at the dinghy parking lot. You have somebody monitoring the parking lots at seaside parking. You have there's places everywhere that people monitor the parking lots. They're not doing it for 24 hours. They're doing it during the busiest time. Mm-hmm. That's what we're looking for. Obviously, we're not doing it for 20. It doesn't make sense. And whether we have to, just be aware. And if you see somebody, getting out of the car, we have, we can monitor the parking lots. Obviously, we had no problem monitoring the basketball courts when there were more than one person basketball. They were shoot off. So if we notice folks who are parking, they can park at 27. But like I said, if they're coming in, they're parking, and they're loading their, it's recreation parking, not beach parking. That's why I see it. It seems. Remember, Gene? Desiree?
Like you individual could be the one it would be advantageous on our part, usage or something of that nature, some verbiage. But I think, I don't.
As you're pulling in, if you have to pass it and they drive, you have to kind of.
In a way that is tied to the recreation center and say going to the beach those are just some things.
For use.
Correct. So and maybe as even part of the sign, do it the right way. Let's say somebody from the recreation department, they would not have the ability to, they would obviously call the police department. So Chief, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the in order to do it right.
Without it being in the parking plan or an ordinance that says that only certain, or that the parking is restricted to certain activities, then there would be nothing we could do. If somebody at the rec center told them, hey, you can't park here, it's rec center only, and they said, don't care, and kept going, it doesn't give us the enforcement ability. We would need some teeth behind some language that's already in our parking ordinance, just to update it that says that, to give us that ability. And then if we have designated parking for certain things, I'm sure we could certainly cite them and tow them from some locations. But we would need something. Just putting a sign out without putting any language in the ordinance to it wouldn't give us the ability to do anything.
Well, that's where you guys step in and make that happen. You just come up with the ideas. So, I don't know if that's something that's possible that we can go ahead and do then, or at least look at it. You know, run up the flagpole and see what comes out.
Well, I think it would be appropriate to have it as part of a conversation of any updates to the sign plan and to the managed beach parking plan. That area was left untreated because it was difficult, the same reason. It's available to not only residents or to the public. But we can certainly look into it and maybe provide some recommended language for that.
But like you said, our sign plan, our beach managed plan is fluid, and we've had to make changes for the past 5 years. For 6 years, how long it's been. And what I've said from the beginning, it's like a game of whack-a-mole. As soon as you push down one, it's going to pop up somewhere else. And those are, and you know what? And that's, we knew that going into this. It's just that, you know, we were just going to handle it as you know, the problems arise. And and that's what we're doing. And like I said, we can make those changes to the managed parking plan. And I'm sure this is not going to be the last one. It's the growth of the Tri-County area continues to grow, and people, you know, want to get to the beach and recreate, and when they're not on lockdown or quarantined or curfew, then yeah, we make it available, but we still need to make our resources that our taxpaying residents are paying to utilize the rec center as well. So
we'll present something for you all to consider next month.
Number Jean, you have one more?
I do. I just wanted to ask, do you want us to see what happens if we try to direct folks to 27th and to Hartnett, not park on 28th, and see if we do get resistance, see where we go from there?
Yeah, that's up between you and the administrator and the chief probably, but I mean, I don't see why not, but yeah.
I'm not scared.
Yeah, I'm obviously just walking out and just saying, hey, this is for, you know, we try to keep these spots open for folks coming to utilize the recreation center in the grounds. And you can park on 27th, you can park on, you know, Hartnett, those areas.
Exactly. We'll play with and see what happens.
Okay, thank you, Noji.
Sure.
Anybody else? Philip, Jimmy?
No, good.
Okay. Where we got here? Next one, discussion of the exception of the city code that allows Hobie Cat style sailboats, which are operational in good condition, to be left on the beach. This has been brought up previously, and I didn't realize there were so many still out there. But Desiree, you want to give us a little backstory on this? And I know we got to email some folks about it, and it does make sense, the fact that they could become an issue in the event of a hurricane or high tides and what have you.
Yes, so the code currently allows an exception for sailboats, Hobie Cat style sailboats, to be left on the beach. You know, it really should be allowed to those front beach property owners who have those sailboats. Right. And we really should be treating and are treating those just like we treat any other chairs or coolers or umbrellas left on the beach. They're tagged, identified, and if not removed before the next day, then the police department or the public works department removes them. There is a concern that there are a few of these type sailboats that are left abandoned. So you know, to me, the sensible thing to do is just to have the police department identify those sailboats, identify the owners, which again, like I said, should be the owner of the property adjacent to where the sailboat is located. And if it is indeed abandoned, then they have to remove it. If it is not, then we should create a system where we notify those folks that, just like we do with trailers on the island, they have to be removed prior to a hurricane, that they are removed before, you know, once the threat of a hurricane appears. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult for us to prohibit that from being on the beach. Maybe possible, but we'll have to be reminded that the property line for those properties extends to the mean high water. Of course, there is a public trust doctrine that allows use of the beach by the public from the landward toe of the dunes. But we shouldn't have any abandoned sailboats on the beach. So, that would be the approach that I would recommend. Just have the police department identify the owners, and if they are indeed abandoned, that they have to be removed, just like we do with other stuff left on the beach.
Okay. Anybody?
No, makes sense.
Yep, it does. Okay, let me move on. A second. I changed I lost my agenda here. Going back. I don't know if anybody, I got it right here. Okay. That's it. Oh, highlights. Chief Graham. You're muted. There you go.
How's it now?
Yep.
Okay. In May 2020, there were 78 calls we responded to. 45 of those were resident, 37 were non-resident, and 20 of those were EMS calls. Obviously, we had fewer people on the island because of the lockdown. 3 main calls that were of interest. One you know about, but I want to mention it again for the record. On May 3rd, there was a water rescue where 2 of our personnel without equipment actually swam out into Breach Inlet and saved someone. You should see a copy of the award they received. On the 9th, there was a fire on Ocean Boulevard, turned out to be an air-conditioned condenser. And on the 18th, there was an electrical hazard where a weatherhead had pulled away from a house on 25th Avenue. I do want to chime in on the public safety building, just so you can actually see the difference. It's not just walking around and seeing new stuff. You can actually see the quality of workmanship and the quality of materials now compared to what we had. So you will be quite amazed when you take your walk around. Any questions?
Perfect. Chief Cornett.
Good afternoon. So for the month of May, the police department responded to approximately 2,400 calls for service. There were 2,331 parking tickets issued for the month. There were 176 charges made for the month, 4 of those being weapon violations. On Memorial Day weekend in itself, we had 577 parking citations, 29 state statute violations, and 13 city ordinance violations, along with 93 warnings that were issued just for the Memorial Day weekend. And are there questions for me from the police department side?
Chief, how does that compare to last year? No.
So, I don't have those numbers right in front of me. I'm not sure, honestly. I'm not prepared to give you that. I'm sorry. I should have seen that coming. I failed to. I'm sorry.
Okay. Jimmy Ward, you're muted. You're muted. Microphone. Push button. One more. There you go. There you go.
Thank you for letting me speak. Chief, did you say there's 2,300 parking tickets?
Correct. 2,331 parking tickets for the month of May.
Look at the accountant going.
Well, if you do that in June, that's a lot of money. If you can collect them, you know, at $100 a piece. Thank you.
Yes.
Perfect. Anybody else? Like I said, in the tickets aren't about the money. It's about trying to reshape parking and trying to direct people where to park and where not to park. And that's the biggest.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Perfect. Any other discussion? Miscellaneous business? Oh man, I moved my map. Let's go all the way back up. That's it. Next meeting is scheduled for the 6th of July. Wow, that should be fun. Monday. Anybody have any problem with that?
Nope.
6th of July, I am. Okay. Okay. That's it. And motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Bye, everyone.
2:16.
See ya.